Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is a creative content writer, author, self development advocate, visionary, and an inclusion and diversity enthusiast. One day she said, "Enough is enough." She tried to remain silent, but that didn't work because no change occurred. Stepping outside of her comfort zone by speaking up, challenging the status quo, and refusing to let limitations on her keep her down, she empowered others to speak up for themselves. She has written a book entitled Chocolate Drop in Corporate America: From the Pit to the Palace, to be the catalyst to allow others to see. She believes we all have been given an excellent purpose in life. It is up to us to walk it out and live victoriously. Let's welcome to the CWS stage Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp. Welcome, Genesis. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Jackie. It is a pleasure and honor to share space with you.
Yeah, so I need to hear about your journey. Why write this book?
So my journey, it felt like some days I was like Daniel's in the lion's den or Moses in the wilderness, and you just kind of get tired of just going through the mundane, the same old routine, especially working in a male-dominated field such as oil and gas and energy for 12 years. And sometimes I was the only chocolate drop in the room. So you work twice as hard to be seen and heard, but then you also want to be respected, but you don't want to do anything that goes against your morals, your values, and your characteristics. So what does that look like? Sometimes you kind of have to take the back seat, but then how much longer do you need to take the back seat? Because that time is wasting. So I was like, you know what? God gave me a voice, God gave me boldness, and I just need to start speaking up, because if God is faithful to see me in this situation, he's going to see me through it. So just a day out of frustration, and when I had enough was enough, just getting a performance review that I knew was not fair and it had biases, I just pulled out my phone and wrote down chocolate drop in corporate America. And that was the only sentence I wrote. But little did I know that was going to be the conduit to fuel the book. And God had more inside of me that needed to be pulled out.
Yeah, I love that. Especially when you talk about boldness, a lot of people think, oh, I just need to be humble, I need to stay in my place. But you understand that God had more for you. So, what was next after you wrote down that title, after you saw that God had more for you? What did you do?
So every time a situation would arise at work, I allowed the situation to be the kerosene or the fuel to the flames. And it just gave me more unction to write more, because I was like, this is bigger than Genesis, but it's about the other Black and Brown people that are going to be coming besides me and behind me. So I just kept on writing. And the funny thing is, I didn't even have a laptop. So I wrote my whole entire book within 2 months on my cell phone until it was time to publish. And my publisher's like, you need to put this in a Word document or something. You cannot just give it to me based on a notes app. So that's when I told my husband, and he's like, okay, we're gonna go look for laptops. And I was like real bougie with it, y'all. I was like, I'm done with it with PCs, babe. I need a Mac. And he's like, babe, you don't need a Mac. I said, I do. And when I got it, I didn't really know how to use it. So I was just over there playing around with it. But you know what? Sometimes God puts a vision in you and you just need to act on it, because sometimes he's wanting us to take the steps. He's already giving us the tools. He's providing the vehicle. Now he's just waiting on us to drive that vehicle.
Yeah. So, what happened after the book was published?
Ooh, okay. So after the book was published, then we all know the BLM, so the Black Lives Matter movement happened, and people are like, "Oh, you wrote your book for the Black Lives Matter." And I was like, "No, I didn't." And it just happened to be coincident. So I think with my book coming out when it did, and then the whole Black Lives Matter movement, it really got people interested in really going beyond the surface level when it came to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so that led the vice president of the company of where I was working for the supply chain organization to call a meeting for those of us that identified as Black, African American, or whatever. And he wanted people to volunteer to tell their stories about personal racism or professional racism. And I was like, sometimes you just got to be a little careful because you just never know how the conversation was going to go. So I was not going to be the one to volunteer information. So I let my coworkers go first. And then he called on me and he's like, can you tell me what your experience has been like with personal or professional? I was like, where do I start? Because I am first generation American. My dad was South American and my mom is Caribbean. And so I pretty much told the story of like what happened to me, and it's going to be real brief. So I said, well, I have a problem whenever I am with my sister's kids who are half Caucasian. They don't look Black. They have like that sandy, blondish, brownish hair, long hair, very light complected. Some people don't even think that, that those are my sister's kids, like sometimes. And I was like, when someone followed me around a grocery store, it's in the area that I live, and Lay's like, she came up to my niece and nephew and like, are you okay? Or just ask these questions. And I'm like, do they look like they're in danger? Do they look like they're in harm? And I was like, I had to like really pay attention to how I responded to that, especially since I live in a area that is predominantly Caucasian, and I was like, okay, if I respond to this in the wrong way, then the cops could get involved and etc. So I kind of just had to, be mindful. So that was one incident, and there's more to that story. But the second incident was with my brother's kids who are half Indian. And my nephew is kind of like a little lighter than me, but then my niece, like you can tell what she is. You don't know if she's Black, you don't know if she's Indian, you don't know if she's Hispanic because she's just very light complected. But they have the same mom, same dad. And my nephew came home one day and he was very distraught. And I always like ask him how his day at school was whenever I go over there. And he's like, there was a kid at recess that didn't want to play with me. And I was like, why, buddy? Like, why didn't you want to play? He said, because his parents told him he can't play with someone if they're not pink. And so by that point, I just busted out laughing, Jackie, because I'm like, pink? What is pink? And then so my sister-in-law was like, oh, pink is like white. And I was like, and just knee jerk, I was like, you know what? Screw that kid. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't say that. And I was like, oh, the devil got a hold of me that day because I was just so mad because at the time he was 6 years old. So who teaches a 6-year-old something like that? Because if that's going to be ingrained in a child, imagine what that child's going to think whenever they're a teenager or whenever they're adult. So then I had to like, dial it back because I had that faux pas. And I said, Jesus is still working on me. Some days I could be half holy, half hood some days. And so I was like, well, buddy, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. But you know what? God made you special for a reason. You have the best of both worlds. Like you're kind of like a chameleon. You could blend over here, you could blend over there. And I just shared that. And I think those experiences of what my nieces and nephews have gone through is not acceptable. So if I could do my part to change the narrative, then that's what I'm gonna do. And then when it came time for the professional story, I was like, well, it's funny that I started with this Fortune 500 oil and gas company in 2013 as an administrative assistant. So from the bottom, even though I left another company as a manager, then here it is in 2020. You're still paying me as an administrative assistant, but I get a limo service to my house to pick me up and take me to the airport when I'm going out to travel to meet clients. I have a corporate Amex card. I have, the ability to stay at really nice hotels and etc. But you're still paying me, quote unquote, as an admin. What other admin in the company has that privileges? They don't. And I said, I've been asking for salary treatments and dot, dot, dot. So there's more to that story, but I know we're pushed for time. So 1 week later, Jackie, after me speaking up so boldly, and I tell you, I guess it was the inner lion in me, I got a $20,000 salary increase 1 week later, and I got a bump in my classification level from a 15 to a 22.
Wow. What is your message to the Christian community, especially those who are in leadership, running companies? How can people as Christians help in these types of situations?
So I think people as Christians, like you cannot turn a blind eye. You really need to remain steadfast. You have to know who you are as well as whose you are. Connect internally and know that God is never going to put more on you than you can bear. Know that there is a purpose and there's a reason for the season that God has you in. And sometimes that season is not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be conducive, but sometimes you have to go through the test in order for your testimony to come to the foreground. Sometimes you have to go through that mess in order for that message to be curated. But all in all, God is going to be with you every step of the way, even if you may not be that perfect Christian. You may not have it all figured out. Like I said, I had faux pas, and God is always working on me. But I'm so glad that He's working on me and He didn't turn His back on me, because that's the difference. Because I want Him to work on me, in me, and through me, because that's going to show my spiritual growth, my personal growth, my professional growth, and etc. And I want you to examine, where are you right now in your life, and where is it that God is calling you to? What is that gut instinct that you have? What is that discernment? What is that still small voice? Because sometimes God will speak to you in a still small voice. Sometimes He'll use a human vehicle to speak to you, so a person, and it may not even be the person that you have had in your mind or picture to speak to you. Or sometimes God will use a situation to break you down so He could build you back up. So just be mindful of the situation that you're in and what's in and around you.
Yeah. Tell people how they can connect with you.
So you could find me via my website, which is genesisamariskamp.net, and that's GenesisAmarisKemp.net. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Genesis Amaris Kemp. I do have a Twitter. Sometimes I do tweet, but I tweet about the podcast, which is Genesis A Kemp. And for those of you who tuned in and you like what you hear, I'm giving away the first chapter of my book for free. That's on my website under the book tab. And then I'm also doing 2 other freebies that are in the health and wellness space. One is a health assessment, because our body is our temple. So we need to be mindful of what we're putting in our body nutrition wise. So go take that health assessment. And the third one is a Kiani Sunrise, which is the superfood, super fruits. It is a package with all your fruits and vegetables in there that you could take, and it'll definitely give you that energy to just keep you going, but also making sure that you're feeding your body with good things that are producing vitality and longevity.
Thank you so much for being a guest today. And thank you for being bold enough to not only speak up, but to walk in what God says He has for you. CWS audience, connect with her. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. And until next time, God bless.